I'm standing in my childhood bedroom at 6 in the morning on what should be the happiest day of my life, staring at a text message that just shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. The phone screen blurs through my tears as I read it again for the 5th time. Darling, there's been a change of plans. We gave the Rosewood estate to your sister Vanessa for her engagement party next month. You'll need to find somewhere else. Sorry for the short notice. Love, Mom. My wedding is in 8 hours. 8 hours. My hands are shaking so badly I nearly drop my phone, but instead of collapsing into panic like my mother probably expects, something cold and crystalline forms in my chest. I've spent 29 years being the understanding daughter, the flexible one, the one who always accommodates. Not today. I scroll through my contacts with steady fingers now, finding a name I haven't called in 3 years. When he answers on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep, I say just 5 words that will change everything. Uncle Harrison, I need you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Isabel Montgomery, though most people call me Belle, and I've always been the responsible daughter in a family that mistakes responsibility for weakness. I'm a landscape architect in Portland, Oregon, someone who spends her days designing public parks and sustainable green spaces, work that requires precision, patience, and the ability to see the bigger picture. These skills, it turns out, are about to become invaluable in ways I never imagined. My fiancé, Daniel Reeves, is still asleep in his apartment across town, blissfully unaware that our wedding venue has been stolen by my mother and given to my younger sister like some kind of twisted hand-me-down. We'd been planning this day for 18 months, every detail carefully chosen and paid for by us, not my parents, specifically to avoid the strings that always seemed to come attached to their money. The Rosewood estate wasn't just any venue. It was a historic property on the Columbia River Gorge, a place where Daniel proposed to me under the ancient rose arbor that gave the estate its name. We'd booked it 2 years in advance, put down a deposit that took me 3 months to save, and I'd personally designed the landscaping modifications that the owners approved specifically for our ceremony. The thought of Vanessa's engagement party, not even her wedding, just her engagement party, happening there instead makes something hot and bitter rise in my throat. My sister has been engaged for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks to my 18 months of planning. But this is how it's always been in the Montgomery family. Vanessa gets what Vanessa wants, and I'm expected to smile and accommodate because I'm the older sister, the mature one, the one who should know better than to make a fuss. I sit on the edge of my childhood bed, in the house where I'd reluctantly agreed to spend the night before the wedding because my mother insisted it was tradition. The pale yellow walls are still covered with my high school art projects and college achievement certificates, faded now and curling at the edges, while Vanessa's room down the hall has been redecorated 3 times to match her evolving aesthetic preferences. The inequality of it all suddenly feels suffocating. I think about all the times I've swallowed my disappointment, all the times I've been the bigger person, all the times I've watched my accomplishments get overshadowed by Vanessa's latest drama or demand. When I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Oregon with my degree in landscape architecture, my parents hosted a small family dinner at home. When Vanessa passed her real estate licensing exam on the 3rd try, they threw her a party at the country club with 50 guests and a live band. When I won the Pacific Northwest Young Designer Award last year, my mother's response was a distracted, "That's wonderful, dear," before launching into a story about Vanessa's new boyfriend. That boyfriend is now her fiancé, Preston Whitmore, the son of a local real estate developer whose family money apparently makes him irresistible to both Vanessa and our parents. I've met Preston exactly 4 times, and each interaction left me with the distinct impression of a man who's never been told no in his entire life. He's handsome in that generic way that money can buy, all perfectly whitened teeth and strategic stubble, but there's something empty behind his eyes. When Daniel and I announced our engagement, Preston was barely a thought in Vanessa's future. Now suddenly he's important enough to steal my wedding venue for an engagement party. The blatant favoritism would be almost funny if it wasn't destroying what should be the best day of my life. I look at my phone again, at the casual cruelty of that text message. Sorry for the short notice. As if this is a minor inconvenience, like asking me to pick up milk on the way home. As if 18 months of planning and dreaming and saving could be dismissed with a simple apology and an expectation that I'll just figure something else out. The wedding is scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. We have 140 guests who have already made travel arrangements, many of them from out of state. We have a photographer booked, a caterer who's been preparing for weeks, a string quartet that learns specific pieces at my request, and a florist who created custom arrangements to complement the estate's natural gardens. All of this coordination and investment, and my mother thinks I can just find somewhere else in 8 hours. The rage that floods through me is clean and clarifying. I've spent my entire life being the good daughter, the one who doesn't make waves, the one who understands that Vanessa needs more attention because she's more sensitive, more delicate, more something that apparently makes her feelings more important than mine. I think about my father, Richard Montgomery, who probably went along with this decision like he goes along with all of my mother's decisions, choosing the path of least resistance rather than standing up for what's right. I think about how many times I've heard, "Can't you just let this one go, Belle?" Or, "You know how your sister gets when she doesn't get her way," or my personal favorite, "You're so much more capable of handling disappointment than Vanessa is." Well, today they're going to find out exactly how capable I am, just not in the way they expect. Uncle Harrison is my mother's older brother, and he's been the black sheep of the family for as long as I can remember. He made his fortune in commercial real estate development but committed the unforgivable sin of divorcing his first wife, my mother's best friend from college, and marrying someone my mother considered unsuitable, a woman named Caroline who came from what my mother sniffily referred to as new money. The irony of this snobbery coming from a woman who grew up solidly middle class before marrying my father wasn't lost on anyone except apparently my mother herself. Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline have been effectively frozen out of family gatherings for the past 3 years, invited only to major holidays and always made to feel like they're doing us a favor by attending. But Uncle Harrison has always been kind to me, slipping me checks for my birthday that my mother would have disapproved of if she'd known, sending thoughtful gifts when I graduated or won awards, and always treating me like I mattered. When he answers his phone at 6:15 in the morning, his voice is alert despite the early hour. "Belle? What's wrong?" The fact that he immediately knows something is wrong, that he doesn't assume I'm calling for some trivial reason, makes my throat tight with emotion. I explain the situation quickly and clearly, my landscape architect's ability to present information concisely serving me well. I tell him about the text message, about the venue being given to Vanessa, about the 8 hours I have to salvage my wedding day. There's a long silence on the other end of the line, and when Uncle Harrison speaks again, his voice has gone cold in a way I've never heard before. "Your mother did what?" he says slowly. "On your wedding day? For an engagement party?" I confirm that yes, this is really happening, and I can hear him moving around, probably getting out of bed, his voice growing more animated. "Belle, honey, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Do you trust me?" I tell him yes, because I do, completely. "Then pack your wedding dress and anything else you need for today, and don't tell anyone where you're going. I'm going to make some calls. Text me Daniel's number. You two are getting married today, and it's going to be more spectacular than anything that could have happened at the Rosewood estate." The certainty in his voice steadies something inside me. I start moving on autopilot, carefully packing my wedding dress into its garment bag, gathering my shoes and jewelry and the small bag I'd prepared for touch-ups throughout the day. My bridesmaid dresses are at my maid of honor's apartment, Emily Chen, who's been my best friend since college and who's going to lose her mind when I tell her what's happening. I text Daniel quickly, trying to figure out how to explain this disaster. "Call me as soon as you wake up. Emergency, but I'm okay. Wedding is still happening but not at Rosewood. Trust me." Then I text Emily with similar instructions, adding, "Don't call my mother," in all caps. The last thing I pack is my laptop, because whatever Uncle Harrison is planning, I'm going to document every moment of it. I'm heading down the stairs with my bags when my mother emerges from the master bedroom, her silk robe tied perfectly, her hair already styled even though it's not even 7 in the morning. Patricia Montgomery has always been beautiful in that particular way that requires constant maintenance, and she's made preserving that beauty her life's work since she married into the Montgomery family 32 years ago. She sees my bags and frowns. "Where are you going?" "We have hair and makeup coming at 9. Her tone suggests I'm being inconvenient by having a reaction to having my wedding venue stolen. I look at her, this woman who gave birth to me and who apparently thinks so little of me that she could send that text message and expect me to simply cope. I'm leaving, I say calmly. Since you gave away my venue, I need to make alternative arrangements. My mother waves a hand dismissively, as if I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Belle, don't be dramatic. I'm sure we can find somewhere else. There's that lovely restaurant downtown that does events. I'll make some calls. The fact that she thinks a random restaurant can accommodate a wedding in 8 hours, that she expects me to scramble to fix the disaster she created, crystallizes everything I need to know about how she views me. No thank you, I say with a smile that doesn't reach my eyes. I have it handled. I walk toward the front door, and my mother follows me, her voice taking on that particular edge that means she's about to lecture me about being ungrateful or difficult or whatever criticism she selected for the occasion. Isabelle Marie, you're overreacting. Vanessa needs the Rosewood estate. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Preston's parents have very specific expectations for the engagement party, and we already promised them. Your wedding would have been lovely there, but you're so creative, I'm sure you can make anywhere look beautiful. That's your job, isn't it? The casual cruelty of reducing my profession to something that exists to serve my family's needs takes my breath away. But I don't engage. I don't argue. I don't explain why this is unacceptable, because if my mother can't see it on her own, no explanation will make her understand. I simply say, I hope Vanessa's engagement party is everything she dreams of, and I mean it sincerely because I'm done competing with my sister for scraps of parental affection and approval. I walk out the front door of my childhood home with my wedding dress and my dignity, and I don't look back. My phone starts ringing before I even reach my car, my mother's name flashing on the screen. I decline the call. She calls again immediately. I decline again. By the time I've loaded my bags into my car and started the engine, she's called 4 more times and sent 3 text messages demanding I come back inside and discuss this like an adult. The irony of that particular request from a woman who made a unilateral decision about my wedding venue and informed me via text message on my wedding day is not lost on me. I drive to Daniel's apartment in Northeast Portland, my hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Daniel is a software engineer at a startup downtown, someone I met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's dinner party where we spent the entire evening arguing good-naturedly about the environmental impact of urban development. He's kind and steady and treats me like an equal partner in every decision we make together, which is why I know he's going to be furious when he finds out what my mother did. Sure enough, when I let myself into his apartment using my key, I find him sitting on the couch in his pajama pants, phone in hand, his expression moving through several stages of disbelief as he reads the forwarded text message I sent him. Your mother gave away our venue, he says slowly, looking up at me with the kind of controlled anger that means he's trying very hard not to explode. On our wedding day. For your sister's engagement party. I nod, setting my bags down. But Uncle Harrison is handling it. We're getting married today, Daniel. Just maybe not the way we originally planned. Daniel stands up and pulls me into a hug, and I let myself lean into him for just a moment before stepping back. There's no time for falling apart. My phone buzzes with a text from Uncle Harrison. Everything's arranged. Bring Daniel to the Columbia River Hotel, Presidential Suite. Be there by 9. Wear something comfortable. Your wedding dress goes to the spa suite. Trust me. I show the message to Daniel, and he looks at me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. What is your uncle planning? He asks. I have no idea, I admit. But whatever it is, it's going to be better than anything my mother could take away from us. We move quickly, Daniel showering and packing his tuxedo while I call Emily and my other bridesmaids, Sarah and Jennifer, explaining in rapid-fire sentences that the venue changed but the wedding is still on. They need to bring the bridesmaid dresses to the Columbia River Hotel by 9:30, and I'll explain everything when I see them. Emily, bless her, simply says, your mom did something terrible, didn't she? And when I confirm, she adds, say no more. I'm rallying the troops. We'll be there. By 8 in the morning, Daniel and I are pulling up to the Columbia River Hotel, one of Portland's most prestigious properties, the kind of place that charges $1,000 a night for their basic rooms and hosts celebrity weddings in their ballrooms. A valet takes our car, and a concierge is waiting to escort us to the presidential suite without us even having to check in. The elevator ride to the top floor is silent, both of us too overwhelmed to speak. When the concierge opens the door to the suite, Uncle Harrison is standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly with his free hand. Aunt Caroline is perched on the sofa, laptop open, also on a phone call, and when she sees us, her face breaks into a warm smile. She covers the phone's mouthpiece and says, "The bride and groom. Come in, darlings. Your uncle is working magic." Uncle Harrison ends his call and turns to us, and I'm struck by how much he looks like a warrior preparing for battle, his eyes gleaming with something that looks a lot like righteous fury mixed with joy. "Belle, Daniel," he says, striding over to shake Daniel's hand and kiss my cheek. "I'm sorry about what Patricia did to you. It's unacceptable, and she's going to learn that actions have consequences." He gestures for us to sit, and Aunt Caroline pours us coffee from a silver service that appeared as if by magic. "Here's what's happening," Uncle Harrison says, sitting across from us with the commanding presence of someone used to making multi-million-dollar deals. "At noon today, you two are getting married on the rooftop terrace of this hotel. I've been friends with the general manager for 20 years, and he's cleared his schedule. The terrace seats 200 comfortably, has a retractable covering in case of weather, and overlooks the river and Mount Hood. The view alone is worth more than anything the Rosewood estate could offer." I open my mouth to ask about the logistics, about the guests who are expecting to go to Rosewood, about the photographer and caterer and all the other vendors, but Uncle Harrison holds up a hand. "Already handled. Caroline is contacting every guest on your list with the new location and time. Most of them haven't left their hotels yet, and for those who have, we're arranging car services to redirect them. Your photographer called me 20 minutes ago after Caroline reached out. She's thrilled because the rooftop terrace is one of her favorite locations in the city and she's been dying to shoot there. Your caterer is already in the hotel's kitchen coordinating with the executive chef. Your florist is on her way with the arrangements, which will actually work better with the terrace's existing garden design. And your string quartet?" He grins. "They're setting up right now." Daniel is staring at Uncle Harrison like he's witnessing a miracle. "How is this possible? We can't afford this venue. It must cost, I don't even know, $50,000 for an event like this." Uncle Harrison waves this away. "Consider it my wedding gift. I've been waiting for an opportunity to properly welcome you into the family, Belle, away from your mother's interference. Today seems like the perfect occasion." His expression softens. "You've been treated like you're less important than Vanessa your entire life, and I'm ashamed I didn't intervene more forcefully before. But I'm intervening now. You're getting the wedding you deserve, and Patricia is going to have to sit at that reception and watch you be celebrated the way you should have been all along." Aunt Caroline adds, "And before you worry about your mother showing up and causing a scene, we've arranged very discreet security. She and your father are welcome at the ceremony if they choose to attend, but if Patricia starts anything, she'll be escorted out so quietly most guests won't even notice." The thought of my mother being removed from my wedding by security should probably horrify me, but instead I feel a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, someone is protecting me from my family's dysfunction instead of asking me to accommodate it. The next 3 hours pass in a blur of organized chaos. Emily arrives with the bridesmaids and their dresses, takes one look at the presidential suite and the rooftop terrace, and declares Uncle Harrison her personal hero. Daniel's groomsmen show up with his tuxedo and immediately start helping with setup, their initial confusion giving way to enthusiasm when they understand what Uncle Harrison pulled off. The hotel's event coordinator, a woman named Sandra who clearly owes Uncle Harrison significant favors, moves through the space like a general commanding troops, directing staff to transform the terrace into a wedding venue that looks like it took months to plan instead of hours. My florist, Janet, actually cries when she sees the space. "Belle, this is perfect for your arrangements," she says, gesturing to the terrace's existing gardens. The roses you chose will complement the hotel's plantings, and the river backdrop is going to make your ceremony photos absolutely stunning. Your mother accidentally did you a favor. The bitter irony of that statement isn't lost on me. At 11:30, I'm in the hotel spa suite having my makeup done by a stylist who Uncle Harrison apparently hired just for me, while Emily helps me into my wedding dress. It's a simple but elegant A-line gown in ivory silk with delicate lace cap sleeves, something I chose because I wanted to feel like myself on my wedding day, not like I was playing dress-up in someone else's fantasy. As Emily fastens the last button, I look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Not because I look different, but because I feel different. I feel powerful. I feel valued. I feel like someone who matters, not because I'm accommodating or understanding or flexible, but simply because I exist and deserve to be treated with basic respect and consideration. My phone, which I've been ignoring for hours, has 17 missed calls from my mother and 6 from my father. There are 23 text messages ranging from confused to angry to finally, in the most recent ones, pleading. I scroll through them quickly and note with grim satisfaction that my mother's tone shifted from demanding to desperate as the morning progressed, and she apparently realized I wasn't coming back. The latest message, sent 15 minutes ago, reads, "Belle, please call me. You're breaking my heart. We can fix this. Don't ruin your relationship with your family over a venue." I almost laugh at the audacity of that statement. I'm not the one who ruined anything. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending that being treated terribly was normal or acceptable. Emily reads my expression and says quietly, "Are you okay?" I think about that question, really think about it, and realize that yes, I'm more okay than I've been in years. I'm perfect, I tell her. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I want to do, with people who actually value me. So yes, I'm perfect. Emily hugs me carefully, mindful of my dress and makeup. Your uncle is amazing. You know that, right? What he did today, most people wouldn't do in a lifetime. I nod, my throat tight with gratitude. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure he knows how much this meant to me. At 11:55, I'm standing at the entrance to the rooftop terrace with Uncle Harrison, who's going to walk me down the aisle since my father, who apparently doesn't know how to stand up to his wife. Uncle Harrison looks at me with such pride and affection that I have to blink back tears. "You ready, kiddo?" he asks, offering me his arm. "More than ready," I tell him. The terrace doors open, and the string quartet begins playing the processional we chose, and I see Daniel waiting for me at the altar with tears streaming down his face. I see my bridesmaids standing proud in their sage green dresses, I see Daniel's groomsmen grinning, I see 140 guests who traveled to celebrate with us, all of them here because they actually care, not because of obligation or social climbing or family politics. And sitting in the third row on the bride's side, I see my parents. My father looks stricken, my mother looks furious, and I realize with crystal clarity that I don't care. Her feelings about this day are no longer my responsibility. I have spent 29 years carrying the weight of her expectations and disappointments, and today, I'm setting that burden down. As Uncle Harrison walks me down the aisle, I keep my eyes on Daniel, on the man who chose me and keeps choosing me, who sees my value without needing me to diminish myself to make him comfortable. When we reach the altar and Uncle Harrison places my hand in Daniel's, he whispers just loud enough for me to hear, "Your grandmother would be so proud of you today." My grandmother, my father's mother who died when I was 15, was the only person in my family who consistently made me feel valued for who I was, not for how well I accommodated others. Knowing she would approve of this moment, of my choice to honor myself, fills me with a peace I didn't know I needed. The ceremony is perfect because it's real. Our officiant, a friend from college who got ordained specifically to marry us, speaks about love as partnership, about choosing each other every day, about building a life based on mutual respect and genuine affection. When Daniel and I exchange vows, promising to be each other's safe harbor and biggest champion, I see several guests dabbing at their eyes, moved by the obvious authenticity of our commitment. When we're pronounced husband and wife and Daniel kisses me with such tenderness and joy, the guests erupt in applause, and I realize that this moment, this day, is already better than anything that could have happened at the Rosewood estate. That venue was beautiful, but it was also tainted by my family's dysfunction. This terrace, this hotel, this wedding arranged in 8 hours by an uncle who actually loves me, this is pure and untainted and entirely ours. The reception begins immediately after the ceremony, and the hotel staff seamlessly transforms the terrace while we take photos with our photographer on the hotel's various balconies and gardens. When we return to the reception, I'm amazed to see how perfect everything looks. The tables are set with linens in cream and sage, complementing my bridesmaid dresses and the floral arrangements. The centerpieces are exactly what I planned, roses and peonies in glass vases that catch the afternoon light. The string quartet has transitioned to reception music, playing softly while guests mingle and enjoy cocktails. Daniel squeezes my hand as we enter, and I squeeze back, both of us marveling at what Uncle Harrison accomplished. As we make our rounds greeting guests, accepting congratulations, I notice my mother sitting rigidly at her table, not eating, not drinking, just sitting with a frozen smile that looks more like a grimace. My father is beside her, looking defeated, and I feel a flash of pity for him before remembering that he enabled this situation by never standing up to his wife, by always choosing the path of least resistance even when it meant sacrificing his daughter's happiness. When it's time for the parent dances, Daniel dances with his mother first, both of them laughing at some private joke, and then it's my turn. My father stands and walks toward me, his steps heavy, and as we move around the dance floor to Etta James singing, at last, he finally speaks. "Belle, I'm sorry. You deserve better than what happened today." I look at him, this man who I've loved and disappointed in equal measure over the years, and I say simply, "Yes, I do. But it's not just today, Dad. It's my whole life. Today was just the first time I stopped accepting it." He nods slowly, and I can see him processing this, understanding perhaps for the first time the cumulative weight of 29 years of being overlooked and undervalued. When the song ends and he escorts me back to my seat, he surprises me by going directly to Uncle Harrison and shaking his hand, saying something I can't hear but that makes Uncle Harrison nod seriously. The speeches during dinner are everything wedding speeches should be, funny and touching and focused on celebrating the couple rather than rehashing family drama. Emily tells stories about our college days that make everyone laugh. Daniel's best man, Marcus, talks about how Daniel lit up when he met me, how he'd never seen his friends so happy. Uncle Harrison doesn't give a speech, having insisted this day is about Daniel and me, not about family politics, but he does raise his glass at the end of the formal toasts and says simply, "To Belle and Daniel, and to building the family you deserve, not just the one you're born into." The guests raise their glasses and echo his words, and I see my mother's face tighten even further. She hasn't spoken to me since I arrived at the ceremony, hasn't congratulated me, hasn't even looked directly at me if she could avoid it. And I find that I'm okay with that. Her approval or disapproval no longer has the power to touch me because I've finally realized that her perspective is warped by her own insecurities and favoritism, and that's not my burden to carry. As the reception continues into the evening, guests dancing and laughing and clearly enjoying themselves, I step away to the terrace railing with Daniel, looking out at the river and the mountains beyond. "We did it," Daniel says, pulling me close. "Despite everything, we had our perfect day." I lean into him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady certainty that comes from knowing I chose the right partner. Better than perfect, I tell him. Because it was real. No pretense, no performance, just us and the people who genuinely care about us. He kisses the top of my head, and we stand there in comfortable silence until Emily comes to find us, pulling us back to the party because apparently our first dance as a married couple is about to begin. As Daniel and I take the floor and the opening notes of our song fill the terrace, I look around at the faces watching us, smiling and happy, and I feel something I haven't felt in my family's presence in years, peace and joy and the absolute certainty that I deserve both. The morning after the wedding, I wake up in the honeymoon suite of the Columbia River Hotel with sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and Daniel's arm draped across my waist. For a moment, I'm disoriented, the events of yesterday feeling almost dreamlike in their intensity. Then I remember the text message, Uncle Harrison's intervention, the rooftop ceremony, and the look on my mother's face throughout the reception, and I know with absolute clarity that everything changed yesterday. My phone, which I'd silenced after the reception ended, shows 42 notifications when I finally check it. Most are congratulatory messages from wedding guests, friends sending photos they took, family members I haven't heard from in years reaching out to say how beautiful the ceremony was. But buried among these messages are 7 texts from my mother and 3 from Vanessa, and the tone of these is distinctly different from the celebration happening in the other threads. My mother's messages start conciliatory, almost pleading. "Belle, we need to talk about yesterday. You embarrassed the family by making such a spectacle. Please call me so we can discuss this rationally." By the 3rd message, the tone has shifted to accusatory. "I can't believe you involved Harrison in our private family business. He had no right to interfere, and you had no right to accept his help without consulting your father and me." The final messages are a mixture of hurt and manipulation. "Your sister is devastated that you're making her engagement about you. She feels terrible about the venue situation, and your dramatic response has overshadowed what should be a happy time for her." I read these messages with a detachment that surprises me, noting the patterns I've never consciously recognized before. The way my mother frames everything to make me the problem, the way she invokes Vanessa's feelings as a weapon, the way she demands discussion while simultaneously dismissing my perspective as irrational. It's masterful manipulation, and I've been falling for it my entire life. Vanessa's messages are even more revealing. "Thanks a lot for ruining my engagement party. Mom and Dad are fighting because of you, and Preston's parents are asking questions about our family drama. You always have to make everything about you, don't you? I hope you're happy." The 2nd message, sent 3 hours later, reads, "I never even wanted the Rosewood estate. Mom insisted because she said it would be better for networking with Preston's family. But now you've turned everyone against me." The 3rd message, sent at 2 in the morning, is the most honest. "You've always been jealous of me. Just because you married some boring engineer doesn't mean you get to ruin my chance at the life I deserve. Stay away from the family if you're going to act like this." I screenshot all of these messages, not because I plan to do anything with them immediately, but because I'm learning that documentation matters. These texts reveal more about my family's dynamics than years of therapy ever could. Daniel stirs beside me, opening his eyes and smiling when he sees me. "Good morning, Mrs. Reeves," he says, and hearing my new name sends a thrill through me. I'm no longer just Isabel Montgomery, the overlooked daughter. I'm Isabel Reeves, a woman who stood up for herself and married a man who values her. "Good morning, husband," I reply, setting my phone aside. "How do you feel about extending our stay here for a few days instead of leaving for our honeymoon immediately? We'd originally planned to fly to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, but after yesterday's chaos, the thought of being unreachable while my family implodes feels strategic." Daniel considers this. "I like it. Give things time to settle before we're thousands of miles away. Plus, this hotel has an incredible spa, and I wouldn't mind just relaxing with you without any pressure." I kiss him gratefully, appreciating once again that I married someone who understands the value of strategic retreat. We spend the morning in the suite, ordering room service and ignoring our phones, just being together without the weight of wedding planning or family drama. Around noon, there's a knock on the door, and when Daniel answers it, Uncle Harrison is standing there with Aunt Caroline, both of them carrying bags from a local bakery. "We brought lunch," Uncle Harrison announces, walking in like he owns the place, which given his relationship with the hotel management, he practically does. "And we need to talk about what happens next." Aunt Caroline sets out sandwiches and pastries on the suite's dining table while Uncle Harrison pulls out a folder I recognize as the kind used for legal documents. "Belle, Daniel, what your mother did yesterday wasn't just rude or thoughtless. It was a breach of contract, and it has legal implications you need to understand." He opens the folder and shows us documentation I didn't even know existed. Apparently, when Daniel and I booked the Rosewood estate, the contract was in both our names, and we'd paid the full deposit plus half the total fee, with the remainder due a week after the wedding. My mother had no legal authority to cancel our booking or transfer it to Vanessa. "The estate's owners contacted me yesterday afternoon," Uncle Harrison explains. "They were confused when Patricia called claiming to be canceling your wedding on your behalf and rebooking for Vanessa's engagement party. They asked for written authorization, which of course your mother couldn't provide. When I contacted them to explain the situation, they were appalled. They've informed Patricia that Vanessa's engagement party cannot happen at their venue, and they're considering legal action for the attempted fraud. I stare at the documents, trying to process this information. My mother tried to steal our venue without any legal right to do so. Uncle Harrison nods grimly. She assumed the venue wouldn't question her authority as your mother. She was wrong. Daniel leans forward, his engineer's mind already working through the implications. So what does this mean practically? Is Belle's mother going to be sued? Uncle Harrison glances at Aunt Caroline before responding. That depends on several factors. The Rosewood estate is willing to let this go if Patricia formally apologizes and compensates them for the time and resources spent dealing with her attempted cancellation. But Belle, you need to decide how you want to handle this within the family. This isn't just about yesterday. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been damaging you for years, and now there's documentation and witnesses. He slides another set of papers across the table. I've been doing some research into your family's financial arrangements. Did you know that your parents established trust funds for both you and Vanessa when you were children? I shake my head, having never heard anything about trust funds. The trusts were supposed to be distributed when each of you turned 30. You're 29, so yours should be dispersed next year. Vanessa is 26, so hers is still a few years away. But Belle, I have reason to believe your mother has been accessing your trust inappropriately. The room feels like it's tilting. What do you mean accessing my trust? Uncle Harrison pulls out bank statements that show a trust account in my name with my parents listed as co-trustees. The account shows regular deposits over the years, contributions from grandparents, inheritance from my grandmother, investment returns, all adding up to a substantial sum that should be mine when I turn 30. But the statements also show withdrawals, dozens of them over the past 5 years, always with my mother's authorization code. These withdrawals total nearly $80,000, Uncle Harrison says quietly. The notations suggest they were for family expenses, but Belle, as the beneficiary, you should have been notified of any withdrawals. Were you? I feel Daniel's hand find mine under the table as I shake my head numbly. I didn't even know the trust existed. My parents never mentioned it. Aunt Caroline's expression is sympathetic but firm. Patricia has been systematically draining your trust fund while keeping you in the dark about its existence. Meanwhile, Vanessa's trust, which I also researched, shows no unusual withdrawals. It's been growing steadily and will be fully funded when she turns 30. The pattern is so blatant, so undeniable, that I feel something cold settle in my chest. This isn't just about favoritism or emotional neglect. This is financial abuse, theft from her own daughter, and it's been happening for years while I remained ignorant. Why are you showing me this now? I ask Uncle Harrison. He meets my eyes steadily. Because yesterday, when you stood up for yourself for the first time, Patricia revealed her true nature to everyone at that wedding. The people who matter saw how she treated you, and they were appalled. But if you let this moment pass, if you go back to being the understanding daughter who accommodates everyone else's bad behavior, nothing will change. She'll continue to take from you, financially and emotionally, and she'll teach Vanessa that this behavior is acceptable. But if you take action now, while the evidence is clear and the witnesses are numerous, you can break this cycle permanently. Daniel squeezes my hand. Belle, whatever you decide, I support you completely. But your uncle is right. This isn't just about money. It's about establishing boundaries and consequences for behavior that should never have been tolerated in the first place. I think about my mother's text messages this morning, the way she framed herself as the victim, the way she invoked Vanessa's feelings to manipulate me, and I realize that Uncle Harrison is absolutely right. If I don't act now, this pattern will continue forever. I'll spend my entire life being the family scapegoat, the one who's expected to sacrifice for Vanessa's comfort, and my mother will never face consequences for her actions. What do I need to do? I ask, and Uncle Harrison's smile is both proud and sad. First, we document everything. The trust fund discrepancies, the venue situation, the pattern of favoritism that multiple family members can attest to. Then you decide whether you want to pursue legal action or simply establish firm boundaries with financial oversight. The goal isn't necessarily to destroy your relationship with your parents, though that might happen. The goal is to protect yourself and ensure this doesn't continue. Aunt Caroline adds gently, and Belle, you should know that you're not the first person Patricia has done this to. She did something similar to Harrison years ago, trying to access a joint account from their parents' estate. That's part of why we've been estranged. She has a pattern of viewing family resources as hers to control, regardless of legal or ethical boundaries. The revelation that my mother has a history of financial manipulation doesn't surprise me as much as it should. It explains so much about the family dynamics I never fully understood, the way Uncle Harrison was gradually frozen out, the whispered comments about him being selfish or ungrateful. He wasn't either of those things. He simply refused to be stolen from, and my mother punished him for it. I want to pursue every option available, I tell Uncle Harrison firmly. I want the trust fund money returned with interest. I want documentation of everything she's done. And I want it made clear that this behavior will have consequences if it continues. Daniel nods his agreement. We also need to think about how this affects our future. If we have children, I don't want them exposed to this kind of toxic dynamic. We need clear boundaries established now, before things get more complicated. Uncle Harrison starts making notes, his legal mind already working through the steps. I'll connect you with a family law attorney who specializes in trust disputes. She's excellent and discreet. We'll also need statements from family members who've witnessed the favoritism and can speak to the pattern of behavior. Your father might be willing to cooperate, especially if he's starting to see how damaged your relationship with your mother has become. The mention of my father brings up complicated emotions. Part of me is angry at him for enabling my mother's behavior for so long, for choosing peace over protecting his daughter. But another part remembers the look on his face during our dance yesterday, the genuine remorse in his apology. Do you think my father knew about the trust fund withdrawals? I ask Uncle Harrison. He shakes his head. I doubt it. Patricia has always handled the family finances, and Richard tends to avoid conflict by staying uninformed. It's a convenient arrangement that allows him to claim ignorance when her actions cross lines. But Belle, whether he knew or not, he enabled this situation by refusing to question her or stand up for you. That's something he'll need to reckon with if you're going to have any relationship going forward. The truth of this settles over me. My father's passivity is its own form of betrayal, perhaps less overtly cruel than my mother's active manipulation, but damaging nonetheless. If I'm going to establish healthy boundaries, they need to apply to both parents, not just the one who's more obviously at fault. We spend the next few hours going through documents with Uncle Harrison, building a comprehensive picture of the financial irregularities and establishing a timeline of events. Aunt Caroline takes notes, occasionally interjecting with questions or observations that help clarify the pattern. By the time they leave in the late afternoon, I have a folder full of evidence, the name and number of a family law attorney, and a plan for moving forward. I also have a headache and an emotional exhaustion that makes me want to sleep for a week. Daniel suggests we go to the hotel spa, and I agree gratefully. As we sink into the hot tub, the tension slowly leaving my muscles, he says quietly, I'm proud of you for doing this. I know it's hard to take action against your own mother, but what she's been doing isn't okay, and you deserve better. I lean my head against his shoulder. I keep thinking about all the times I made excuses for her, all the times I told myself she just didn't understand how her actions affected me. But she understood perfectly. She just didn't care, or she cared more about Vanessa than about being fair to both her daughters. The next morning, I have my first meeting with the family law attorney, Catherine Bradshaw, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that miss nothing. She reviews the documentation Uncle Harrison provided and asks me detailed questions about my childhood, my relationship with my parents and sister, and specific instances where I felt my mother's favoritism crossed lines. Some of these stories I've never told anyone, not even Daniel, because saying them out loud always made me feel petty or oversensitive. But Catherine listens without judgment, occasionally making notes, and when I finish, she sits back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. Isabel, what your mother has done constitutes financial elder abuse in reverse, adult child abuse through financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. The trust fund withdrawals alone give us grounds for legal action. But I want you to understand what pursuing this will mean for your family relationships. Your mother will likely never forgive you. Your sister, who benefits from your mother's favoritism, will probably side against you. Your father will be forced to choose between his wife and his daughter, and given his history of conflict avoidance, that choice might not go the way you hope. Are you prepared for those consequences? I think about this question seriously, not rushing to answer. Am I prepared to potentially lose my entire family of origin over this? To become the black sheep, the ungrateful daughter, the one who aired family business in public? But then I think about the alternative, continuing to be stolen from and manipulated, teaching any future children that this kind of treatment is normal, spending the rest of my life walking on eggshells to avoid my mother's displeasure. Yes, I tell Catherine. I'm prepared. Because the family I thought I had doesn't actually exist. The version where my mother loves me and wants what's best for me, where my sister and I support each other, where my father protects his children, that family is a fantasy. The real family is one where I'm exploited and expected to accept it gracefully. I'd rather lose a fantasy than continue living in a toxic reality. Catherine nods approvingly. Good. That clarity will help you get through what comes next. Now, let's talk strategy. Over the next week, while Daniel and I remain at the Columbia River Hotel in what's becoming an extended working honeymoon, Catherine builds our case. She subpoenas trust fund records, interviews witnesses including several family members who attended the wedding and were shocked by what they saw, and documents the pattern of financial and emotional abuse spanning years. Uncle Harrison provides additional evidence about my mother's history of financial manipulation within the extended family. My father, surprisingly, agrees to meet with Catherine and provides his own testimony about my mother's control over family finances and his growing concerns about the favoritism shown to Vanessa. During his interview, which Catherine shares with me afterward, my father admits that he knew about the trust funds but never reviewed the account statements, trusting my mother to handle the details appropriately. When confronted with evidence of the unauthorized withdrawals, he appears genuinely shocked and, according to Catherine, broke down crying. He either genuinely didn't know, or he's an excellent actor, Catherine tells me. My professional opinion is that he didn't know the specifics, but he willfully remained ignorant because investigating would have required confronting your mother, and that's something he spent 30 years avoiding. The revelation that my father's ignorance was willful rather than innocent doesn't make me feel better, but it does provide clarity. He chose comfort over knowledge, and in doing so, he enabled my mother to steal from me for years. That's a choice with consequences, and if he wants a relationship with me going forward, he'll need to acknowledge those consequences and change his behavior. Meanwhile, news of the legal action begins to spread through the extended family, and the responses are illuminating. My mother's sister, Aunt Diane, whom I barely know because of the family estrangement, reaches out to express support and shares her own story of being financially manipulated by my mother years ago. Several cousins contact me privately to say they always sensed something was wrong with how my mother treated me compared to Vanessa, but they didn't feel it was their place to intervene. My paternal grandmother's sister, Great Aunt Judith, who's 92 and apparently still sharp as a tack, sends me a letter that makes me cry. She writes about watching my mother's favoritism develop over the years, about trying to compensate by giving me extra attention and gifts, about her regret that she didn't speak up more forcefully when it might have made a difference. The family members who don't reach out are equally telling. Vanessa sends one text message after learning about the legal action. I can't believe you're suing Mom over money. You're tearing this family apart over greed. I'll never forgive you for this. My mother's response comes through my father, who calls me in tears to beg me to drop the lawsuit. Your mother is devastated, he says. She made mistakes, yes, but this is destroying her. Can't we handle this privately as a family? I listened to him plead for several minutes before interrupting. Dad, she stole $80,000 from my trust fund. That's not a mistake. That's systematic theft over multiple years. And the venue situation wasn't an isolated incident. It was the latest in a lifetime of treating me like my feelings and needs don't matter. If she's devastated, maybe it's because she's finally facing consequences for her actions. My father is quiet for a long moment. You sound different, Belle. Harder. I consider this. No, Dad. I sound like someone who finally values herself enough to demand basic respect and fairness. If that seems hard to you, it's because you're used to me being soft enough to walk all over. The conversation ends shortly after that, with my father promising to think about what I said. I don't know if he will actually reflect or if he'll simply retreat further into denial and peacekeeping. Either way, I've said what needed to be said. As our extended stay at the Columbia River Hotel comes to an end and Daniel and I finally prepare to leave for our delayed honeymoon, Catherine calls with an update. Your mother's attorney has reached out about settling. They're proposing she return the full amount withdrawn from the trust, approximately $80,000, plus 20% as acknowledgement of lost investment returns. In exchange, you would agree not to pursue criminal charges for fraud or theft. They're also offering to restructure the trust so your mother no longer has access or signatory authority. I discussed this with Daniel, who's been my rock throughout this entire ordeal. What do you want to do? He asks. Is the money enough, or do you want her to face criminal consequences? I think about what I actually want from this situation. Public humiliation of my mother? Criminal prosecution? Or simply reclaiming what's mine and establishing boundaries that protect me going forward? I want the money returned, the trust restructured, and a formal written apology that acknowledges specifically what she did and why it was wrong, I tell Catherine when I call her back. Not a vague, "I'm sorry you were hurt," apology, but a clear admission of wrongdoing. If she's willing to provide that, I'll agree not to pursue criminal charges. Catherine sounds pleased. That's a reasonable position that demonstrates you're being rational rather than vindictive. I'll communicate your terms. 2 days later, while Daniel and I are finally on a plane to Costa Rica, Catherine emails me a scanned document. It's a formal letter from my mother, clearly written or heavily edited by her attorney, but containing the key elements I required. I acknowledge that I withdrew funds from Isabel's trust account without her knowledge or consent, in violation of my fiduciary duty as co-trustee. These withdrawals, totaling approximately $80,000, were inappropriate and caused financial harm to my daughter. I acknowledge that my actions constituted a breach of trust in both financial and familial terms. I am returning the full amount withdrawn plus additional compensation for lost returns. I apologize for these actions and for the pattern of favoritism and manipulation that preceded them. It's not a warm or personal apology, and I suspect every word was painful for my mother to write or approve. But it's an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, in writing, which is more than I expected to receive. I accept the settlement terms through Catherine, and the money is transferred back into my trust account with the restructured terms that remove my mother's access. The trust will now be under the sole control of an independent trustee until my 30th birthday, at which point the full amount will be disbursed to me. Catherine also negotiates an agreement that Vanessa's trust will be reviewed to ensure similar unauthorized withdrawals haven't occurred there, though I suspect we both know we won't find any. The pattern has always been clear. My mother takes from me to give to Vanessa, whether it's attention, opportunities, or actual money. At least now there's a paper trail and legal consequences that should prevent it from happening again. The Costa Rica honeymoon is everything we hoped it would be: 2 weeks of rainforests and beaches, adventure and relaxation, and most importantly, time to simply be together without the weight of family drama. Daniel and I spend long evenings on our bungalow's porch, talking about the future we want to build together, the values we want to center in our marriage, and how we'll handle family relationships going forward. We both agree that if we have children, my mother will have limited supervised access until she demonstrates genuine change behavior over a sustained period. We agree that holidays will be spent with people who treat us with respect, whether that's family by blood or by choice. We agree that we'll build our own traditions rather than conforming to family expectations that leave us feeling diminished or undervalued. These conversations are clarifying and empowering, cementing our partnership in ways that go beyond romance into real-life planning and boundary setting. When we return to Portland in late July, tanned and relaxed and ready to start our married life properly, there's a letter waiting for me at our apartment, forwarded from my old address. It's from my father, handwritten rather than typed, and the shaky script suggests it took him multiple attempts. Belle, I've had a lot of time to think while you were gone. Your mother and I are living separately right now. Not divorced, but she's staying with Vanessa while I figure out what I want my life to look like. I've started seeing a therapist, which is something I should have done decades ago. I'm beginning to understand how my conflict avoidance enabled your mother's behavior and hurt you in the process. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I hope that someday we can rebuild our relationship on a healthier foundation. I love you, and I'm proud of the woman you've become, even though I can't take much credit for it. You became strong despite our failings, not because of our parenting. Love, Dad. I read the letter multiple times, looking for hints of manipulation or requests for me to fix things, but I don't find any. It seems genuine, a first step toward actual accountability rather than just placating apologies designed to restore the status quo. I don't respond immediately, needing time to process, but I do save the letter in a folder with all the other documentation from this period. Whether my father and I can rebuild a relationship remains to be seen, but at least he's finally acknowledging the problem, which is more than my mother has done beyond the legally mandated apology. Vanessa, unsurprisingly, has gone completely silent. Her social media, which I check occasionally out of morbid curiosity, shows a carefully curated life of engagement party planning, romantic dinners with Preston, and frequent references to family meaning everything. She's blocked me on all platforms, which honestly feels like a relief. If she wants to pretend I don't exist, that's fine. I have no interest in maintaining a relationship with someone who views me as competition rather than family. My relationship with Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline, however, has deepened significantly. They host us for dinner regularly, introducing us to their social circle and treating us like the family they never had children to create. Caroline, who's an interior designer, helps me and Daniel decorate our new apartment, the one we moved into together as an actual married couple. Harrison connects me with professional opportunities in landscape architecture, introducing me to developers who need sustainable design consultations for their projects. They ask nothing in return except our company and genuine affection, which is such a stark contrast to my parents' transactional approach to relationships that it takes me months to fully trust it. But gradually, I begin to understand what healthy family relationships look like. They involve mutual respect, genuine interest in each other's lives, support that doesn't come with strings attached, and boundaries that are respected rather than constantly tested. By autumn, I've settled into my new life with a sense of peace I never knew was possible. My career is flourishing with several high-profile projects that will significantly raise my professional profile. My marriage is strong, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine partnership. My chosen family, including Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline, Emily and her husband, and several close friends from work and college, provides the support and connection I need without the toxicity I grew up with. The money from the trust settlement, once it's fully disbursed on my 30th birthday in December, will allow Daniel and me to make a down payment on a house with land where I can experiment with native plant gardens and sustainable landscaping techniques. Everything is falling into place in ways I couldn't have imagined on that terrible morning when my mother's text message shattered my wedding day plans. One Saturday afternoon in October, while Daniel and I are at a farmer's market buying produce for the week, I run into Vanessa and Preston. It's the first time I've seen my sister since the wedding, and the encounter is awkward in the extreme. Vanessa looks thinner than I remember, her smile brittle when she sees me, and Preston immediately tries to steer her away. But she stops, maybe out of curiosity or maybe out of some impulse she can't quite suppress. "Belle," she says, my name sounding strange in her mouth after months of silence. "Vanessa," I reply neutrally. "How are you?" She laughs, but it's a harsh sound without humor. "How am I? My family is destroyed because you couldn't let go of ancient history. Mom's depressed, Dad's living alone like some sad divorced man, and everyone acts like I'm the villain for supporting my own mother. So I'm fantastic, thanks for asking." I look at my sister, this woman I shared a childhood with, and I realize I feel nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not even pity. Just a vast indifference. "Vanessa, I didn't destroy our family. I simply stopped allowing myself to be destroyed by it. If you can't see the difference, that's not my problem to solve." She glares at me. "You always thought you were better than me. Smarter, more accomplished, more moral. But you're just bitter and jealous, and now you're alone except for your boring husband and your pathetic little career." Daniel, who's been standing quietly beside me, speaks up for the first time. "Vanessa, I think it's time for you to leave. Belle has tried to be civil, but you're determined to make this ugly. Don't contact us again unless you're ready to have an actual conversation like an adult. Preston finally succeeds in pulling Vanessa away, muttering apologies that sound more embarrassed than sincere, and Daniel and I are left standing by the vegetable stands with other market-goers carefully pretending they didn't just witness that scene. I'm sorry, I tell Daniel. You shouldn't have to deal with my family drama. He shakes his head, pulling me close. Your family drama is my family drama now. That's what marriage means. Besides, I meant what I said. She doesn't get to talk to you like that without consequences. We finish our shopping in companionable silence, but I'm thinking about Vanessa's words, about being alone except for my husband and my career, and I realize she genuinely believes that's an insult. She thinks that having a supportive partner and meaningful work is somehow less valuable than having a family that treats you terribly but at least provides the illusion of belonging. The realization is sad in a distant way, like mourning someone who died years ago. The sister I thought I had never really existed, and the sister who does exist isn't someone I would choose to have in my life even if we weren't related. That's a truth I needed to accept, and finally, standing in the autumn sunshine with Daniel's arm around me and a bag of organic vegetables in my hand, I do. As the holidays approach, Daniel and I face our first real test of the boundaries we've established. My mother, through my father, extends an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner at Vanessa's new house, apparently purchased with help from Preston's family since my sister's real estate career hasn't exactly taken off. The invitation is framed as an olive branch, a chance for the family to heal and move forward. My father includes a personal note asking me to consider attending for his sake, saying he misses me and wants to see me happy. Daniel leaves the decision entirely to me, saying he'll support whatever I choose. I think about it carefully, consulting with my therapist who I started seeing again after the wedding to process everything that happened. She asks me what I hope to gain from attending versus what I risk by going. The potential gains are minimal, maybe a slightly less strained relationship with my father, possibly a civil interaction with my sister. The risks are substantial, being subjected to my mother's passive-aggressive commentary, having my boundaries tested, potentially undoing months of healing by stepping back into the family dynamic that damaged me for so long. In the end, I decline the invitation politely but firmly. I send my father a separate message explaining that I need more time before I'm ready to be in my mother's presence, that I appreciate his efforts to bridge the gap but he needs to understand that rebuilding trust takes more than a few months and a single settlement agreement. I suggest that he and I have lunch alone sometime in December, just the two of us, if he genuinely wants to reconnect. His response comes quickly and is more understanding than I expected. He agrees to lunch and says he respects my boundaries, even if it makes the holidays more complicated for him. I don't hear from my mother or Vanessa about my decision, which is probably for the best. Instead, Daniel and I host our first Thanksgiving as a married couple, inviting Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline, Emily and her husband, and several friends who've become our chosen family. We cook together, laugh together, share what we're grateful for without any undercurrent of competition or criticism, and I realize this is what family is supposed to feel like. Safe, joyful, genuine. It's everything my family of origin never was, and I'm grateful beyond words for the people who've shown me what real love and support look like. My 30th birthday arrives in mid-December with unexpected snow blanketing Portland in a rare winter wonderland. Daniel surprises me with a small gathering at our apartment, just our closest friends and Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline, and when midnight strikes, my trust fund officially becomes mine without restrictions or oversight. The final amount, after the returned funds and accumulated interest, is substantial enough to change our financial future in meaningful ways. We celebrate quietly, toasting to new beginnings and the freedom that comes from finally controlling my own resources. Uncle Harrison pulls me aside at one point and hands me an envelope containing documents I don't immediately understand. "That's the deed to a property I think you'll appreciate," he says with a mysterious smile. "Consider it a very belated birthday gift from someone who should have intervened in your life much sooner." The property turns out to be 5 acres of land along the Willamette River, currently undeveloped but zoned for residential use, perfect for the sustainable demonstration garden I've been dreaming about creating. The land includes river frontage, mature trees, and southern exposure ideal for solar panels and greenhouse structures. It's worth easily 6 figures, and I'm overwhelmed by the generosity until Uncle Harrison explains that he'd purchased it years ago as an investment and always intended to pass it to family eventually. You're the family member who'll actually appreciate it and use it for something meaningful, he tells me. Caroline and I don't have children, and we'd rather see you build something beautiful there than sell it to developers who'll cover it with cookie-cutter houses. I hug him tightly, crying happy tears for once, and promise that I'll create something worthy of his faith in me. Daniel is already sketching ideas for a timber frame house we could build ourselves, incorporating passive solar design and rainwater harvesting, turning the property into a living laboratory for sustainable residential development. In January, my father and I finally have that lunch he suggested months ago. We meet at a quiet restaurant downtown, neutral territory where neither of us has history or baggage. He looks older than I remember, grayer and more lined, but also somehow lighter, as if living separately from my mother has lifted a weight he didn't know he was carrying. We make small talk for the first few minutes, discussing my work and his recent retirement from the accounting firm where he spent his entire career. Then he sets down his fork and looks at me directly. Belle, I need to say some things, and I need you to just listen until I'm finished. I nod, bracing myself for whatever comes next. I failed you as a father, he begins, his voice steady but emotional. I knew your mother favored Vanessa. I saw how she dismissed your accomplishments and made excuses for your sister's behavior. I watched her undermine you in small ways that added up to massive damage over the years. And I did nothing because confronting her seemed harder than just keeping the peace. He continues, explaining that his own childhood in a volatile household made him conflict-averse to an unhealthy degree, that he chose a wife who seemed calm and controlled compared to his own mother's chaos, not realizing until too late that control and manipulation often go hand in hand. He admits that the trust fund situation was the wake-up call he needed, that seeing the documented evidence of financial theft made him finally confront truths he'd been avoiding for decades. Your mother has agreed to start therapy, though I don't know if it will help, he says. She still maintains that she was borrowing from your trust temporarily and always intended to pay it back, that you overreacted and destroyed the family over a misunderstanding. I don't think she's capable of real accountability, at least not yet. Maybe not ever. I appreciate his honesty even as it confirms what I already suspected. My mother isn't going to change, isn't going to acknowledge the full extent of her actions, isn't going to suddenly become the parent I deserved. That ship has sailed, and accepting its departure is part of my healing process. My father and I agree to rebuild our relationship slowly, with clear boundaries and regular check-ins. He'll come to Sunday dinners at our apartment once a month, just him, giving us time to develop a connection separate from my mother's influence. He'll respect that I'm not ready to see my mother or Vanessa, and he won't pressure me to reconcile before I'm ready, if I'm ever ready. In exchange, I'll try to be open to the possibility that he can change, that his recent growth is genuine rather than performative. It's a tentative beginning, but it feels honest in a way our relationship never has before. As we're leaving the restaurant, he hands me a small wrapped package. This was your grandmother's, he says, referring to his mother who died when I was 15. She wanted you to have it when you got married, but with everything that happened, I forgot until I was going through old boxes. Better late than never. Inside is a delicate silver bracelet engraved with a quote from Maya Angelou about courage and strength. My grandmother was the one person in my childhood who consistently made me feel valued, and wearing her bracelet feels like carrying her approval and love with me. I slip it on my wrist and hug my father, grateful for this small connection to the past that doesn't hurt. By spring, Daniel and I have begun preliminary work on the river property, clearing invasive species and mapping the land's natural features to inform our design. I've taken a leave of absence from my job to focus on this project, using my trust fund money to support us while I create what I'm calling the River's Edge Sustainability Center. The plan is to build our home as the centerpiece, demonstrating cutting-edge green building techniques, then develop the surrounding land into public gardens showcasing native plants, permaculture food forests, and low-impact landscaping methods. Uncle Harrison has connected me with grant programs and nonprofit partners interested in educational programming, and the project is attracting attention from sustainable design communities across the Pacific Northwest. What started as my mother's attempt to sabotage my wedding day has somehow led to the most exciting professional opportunity of my career, the chance to create something meaningful that will benefit the broader community while providing Daniel and me with a home that reflects our values. One warm afternoon in May, while I'm planting the first trees in what will become the native species demonstration area, Emily brings her 6-month-old daughter to visit. Watching my best friend navigate new motherhood with grace and humor makes me think about my own future family plans. Daniel and I have discussed children, agreeing we want them eventually, but only when we feel emotionally and financially stable enough to provide the kind of secure, loving environment neither of us had growing up. As I hold Emily's baby and feel her tiny fingers wrap around mine, I make a silent promise that any children I have will never wonder whether they're valued, will never be compared unfavorably to siblings, will never have their trust funds raided or their wedding venues stolen. They'll grow up knowing that love isn't conditional on achievement or compliance, that family means support without strings attached, that their parents will protect them rather than sacrifice them for easier relationships with difficult relatives. Breaking generational cycles of dysfunction is hard work, but it's the most important work I can imagine doing. In June, almost exactly a year after the wedding that changed everything, Daniel and I host a gathering at the River's Edge property to celebrate the completion of our home's foundation and the beginning of vertical construction. Uncle Harrison and Aunt Caroline are there, of course, along with Emily and her family, several colleagues from my old job, and dozens of friends who've become our chosen family. My father comes too, bringing his new girlfriend, a kind woman named Susan who he met at his therapy group and who treats him with a gentle patience that suggests she understands he's still learning how to be in a healthy relationship. There's no sign of my mother or Vanessa, and their absence doesn't create the painful void it might have a year ago. Instead, their absence simply makes space for people who actually care about us to celebrate our joy without drama or competition. As the sun sets over the river and our guests mingle around the construction site that will become our home, I stand with Daniel surveying everything we've built together, both literally and figuratively. "Do you ever regret how everything happened?" he asks quietly. "The chaos with your family, the legal battles, the permanent rifts?" I think about this seriously before answering. I regret that it was necessary, I tell him. I regret that my mother couldn't be the parent I deserved, that my sister and I will probably never have a real relationship. But I don't regret standing up for myself. That text message on our wedding morning was the worst thing that could have happened at the time, but it forced me to finally see clearly and take action. If she hadn't been that blatantly cruel, I might have spent the rest of my life making excuses for smaller cruelties, accepting scraps of affection and calling it love. So no, I don't regret it. I'm grateful for the clarity, even though it came with pain. Daniel kisses my forehead and we turn back to our guests, to the life we've chosen and created, to the family we've built from people who actually know how to love without conditions or competitions. My phone buzzes in my pocket, and when I glance at it, I see a text from an unknown number. "I heard about your river project. It sounds amazing. I'm proud of you, even if I can't say so in person. Love, Dad." I smile and slip the phone away, understanding that my father is doing his best to show support while respecting my boundaries about contact. It's enough for now. Maybe someday there will be more, or maybe this is all our relationship can be given the damage that came before. Either way, I'm at peace with it because I finally understand that I can't control other people's choices or growth, only my own responses and boundaries. The wedding venue my mother gave away would have been beautiful, but this life I've built from the ashes of that betrayal is better than anything I could have planned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but simply building a life so fulfilling that the people who tried to diminish you become irrelevant to your happiness. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.